change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
All right, let's go. Woo!
Wow. Love that energy. Love it.
It's Friday afternoon. I mean, come on, what's not to like? It's Friday afternoon. I'm spending time with my friend Scott Rosenkrantz here on the Fundraising AI podcast, episode 19. Honestly, I don't know if I thought we'd get to episode 19. So I think that's pretty cool, right?
That's pretty cool. We had a lot to talk about. We still have plenty more to talk about. I just hope that people are still listening.
Yeah. I think
us recording 19 episodes and people listening to 19 episodes are two different things.
Honestly, you and I could talk about this week. You and I were both traveling. It's amazing to me how many people have come up and were like, I'm listening to your podcast and I'm learning new things. I'm increasing my fluency. So that surprised me. I think the thing that surprised me the most about this podcast is actually how much I've enjoyed doing it. I guess I'm not surprised we're still doing it because we were having these conversations either way. But the reality is that we're still hitting record. And I think hearing from others actually just encourages us to do more.
Yeah. I forget if I mentioned this in a previous episode, but somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn saying that they've been listening to this. They're on the AI committee for their organization. And this podcast has helped them navigate those conversations.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I don't know how, but I'm glad it's working.
And I have a friend, he drives for Coca-Cola and he's listened to every episode and comes back to me and is like, hey, this thing that you were talking about, I thought that was really cool. That was funny. And so shout out to Angel for listening to the podcast. It's awesome. So we're here, episode 19. We've got so much to talk about. I love when we have guest speakers, and we're going to have some really great ones coming up here. But I also love when we can just break down the week. And you and I are both traveling this week, so we could do a real quick recap on that, because everywhere we go, it's basically about AI and about responsible AI. And we're getting feedback from others on where they're at, and what they're doing, what they're not doing. I had some interesting observations this week. And then we got to just roll into all the other stuff, because there's just like a ton of updates on OpenAI. There's updates on government intervention and AI safety. There's some new announcements coming out about some new things that are going to be out. We got layoffs from Google. We've got Ukraine using AI generated bots to speak to the masses. I mean, it's just cuckoo stuff. So our clock is ticking. Let's go. Why don't we just jump in first, share where you were at this week and what you were doing, and then maybe just a sentiment of what the response was based on some machine learning work that we've been working on for a while.
Yeah. So for those who might not know, we've been building through Donor Search AI and previous roles, we've been building custom machine learning models for nonprofits for the past 6 years, right? So we probably worked with hundreds of nonprofits on how to use it, on the benefits of doing this, getting away from traditional methods of scoring and prediction and so on. So one of our clients, University of Florida Foundation, invited me to come down to speak to their advancement team, all staff retreat. Now that the students have all graduated, they had their team of 300 people, full day session, and they had 4 different tracks, a couple different sessions talking about all different things. So I came down to talk about why we're doing this, essentially the generosity crisis, how fewer donors, fewer dollars year after year, right? Prioritizing the wrong metrics to identify who's going to make a gift and so on. And then what are we building for University of Florida? Because we've been building this model for over a year now, we have some really impressive results that I was able to share. But it was a cool opportunity for me because I usually don't get to talk to teams at large like that. I usually talk to prospect researchers. Sometimes I talk to leadership, director of prospect research, or maybe some gift officers and so on. But this was anyone and everyone that was in the advancement team. So some really great questions came out. I mean, the keynote speaker, who just happened to be a bald, bearded man talking about artificial intelligence. So there's probably a lot of confusion.
Did you compare beards or whose was better?
We didn't. I was a little bit envious.
Wow.
I wanted to ideally be him in 10 years. But he was up there talking about how AI is going to change all of our work. He's a professor from the business school at University of Florida. So a lot of resonance. So it was easy for me to just kind of pick up off of that and say, here's how you're already doing it. But what I loved about University of Florida is they're actually the only nonprofit that I know of personally that is both endorsed in using generative AI. They have a ChatGPT Teams license for all staff and all students for generative AI. and they're using predictive AI. So the power of those two combined, I mean, they're fully invested in artificial intelligence, in technology of the future, and so on. So it was just a really cool opportunity, wonderful conversations coming out of there. And I think that as a result, they're going to have so much more success because now they're bringing all parties to the table to see the value of
Mhm.
this and how, again, bringing different perspectives, different use cases, and how it works across all these different teams and their
That's awesome.
objectives.
I mean, the only thing I really heard in all
Yeah.
that was generosity crisis, hashtag Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and where all books are sold. So thanks for that shout out. No, I'm
Yep.
just kidding. What's so interesting about that is that you speaking to a broader audience around kind of this, I mean, a very kind of technical thing, right? I mean, predictive AI and you're sharing results and it's a journey, not a destination. I mean, where would this a conversation, what would it have looked like in the look on people's faces had looked like 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago before ChatGPT came out? Like, you and I were both doing this for a long time, and we were sitting in the same rooms. We're like, "Hey, here's AI, here's machine learning, and this is what we're doing, and this is how it works." And it's just like, people would stare at us like we had 3 heads. Like, it was just so different. So, I mean, you and I spoke yesterday after you were done with that, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like you said, like a ton of people came up to you after, like from not just
Yeah.
not data scientists, not analysts, everyone was
Yeah.
just coming up and like so interested. I think that's just that curiosity is so different right now, which is awesome.
And it was cool because there were people who oversaw data. So the head of the marketing, right? They had access to data sets that we didn't have in our model, right? They say, how do we work with you to make sure that you have access to this? Principal gift officers are coming up saying, how do we get access to this tool?
Yeah.
So everybody wants to play a role. And the guy doing the keynote, again, that professor of business, it's funny because he asked a question. He said, how many of you are using AI assistants? And some people raised their hand. He said, how many of you are using Google Maps?
Yeah.
Have used Google Maps this week? 'Cause if so, you're all
Yeah.
using AI
Yeah.
assistants. That's how we started our pitches and started our conferences,
Like
3
literally,
years
we
ago,
have
like you
decks
said.
from 5 years ago that had
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
pictures or logos from Netflix and Pandora and others
Yeah.
that it's like, you're already using AI. Yeah, so thinking about that, I was in Cincinnati at the Woodmark conference, which is the Association for Children's Hospitals, like 5 or 600 people. I did a keynote on overcoming the competition for connection, which is really kind of the idea that raising more money from less people, but that we are no longer in the business of raising money. We're in the business of creating connection. We live in the attention economy. We're in the business of creating connection, and how the average person by next year will interact with around 5,000 algorithms per day. So we went from about 300 algorithms a day not that long ago, 10 years ago, to over almost 5,000 algorithms a day as of next year. And yet most nonprofits are just doing things the same way and expecting a different result. I would say the biggest takeaway for me, so I had 5 presentations in 2 days, and they were all different. AI transformation, philanthropic R&D, individual use of AI for your own personal career. And then I think the one that was most interesting, it was a closed door session with all the chief development officers, which is more
Yeah.
than anything, I think I would say the big takeaways were thinking about running a large $100 million organization, $50 million organization, whatever it is, $1 billion organization, without having data as a seat at the table. Like someone who is like your number two that is whispering in your ear that you could rely on, that any decision you make would be made based on feedback that you'd have with someone that gets to see it all, and how rare that is. I mean, truly rare. And so I think that was just opened up a really incredible, like, need to speak very directly that if you as organizations or as leaders of organizations don't embrace this AI transformation, your organization will not be relevant in the future. And I think to your point where you're talking about how UFF or UF in general has licenses for generative AI, predictive AI for students and faculty is crazy, because when I asked people to raise their hand of how many people were using generative AI broadly, and I think there were 500 people at the conference, it's like 5 or 10%. And in fact, we end up lots of
Yeah.
conversations of people saying, well, we'd love to use it, or we are using it, but we're using it. We're not authorized to log in to OpenAI on our desktop. So we're sitting there on our phones or our iPads or their shadow computer. And it's like when like teenagers start to hide their social media account from you and they have these fenced accounts that they're not their real name. It's what everyone's doing. So
Yeah.
all that to say, I think that actually is a good springboard into our conversation on a report from Microsoft that you found this week that you sent over to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just says it all. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? And then We'll circle back to OpenAI after that because there's a bunch of cool stuff that's coming out soon.
Yeah. So Microsoft came out with their 2024 Work Trend Index report. And I mean, not that it's shocking. It's shocking and it's not shocking, right? So some of the stats, 90% of the people that were referenced say that AI helps them save time. 85% say it helps them focus on their most important work. 4% say it allows them to be more creative. 83% say it allows them to enjoy their work more, right? Like
Yeah.
those are huge numbers. We would have expected those numbers to eventually get there, but I think the fact that they're getting there so quickly, because it's still relatively
I mean,
quick, right? GPT's been around for a year and a half.
Ridiculous, right? So 83% say that they enjoy their work more. It
Yeah.
costs $20 a month. If I could spend I've managed people for 20 years
Enjoy
in my
anything
career. If
more.
I could like spend $20 a month to have 83% of my staff say they enjoy their work more, holy moly.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to the report. I mean, it is an absolute must read in terms of just drilling down into the benefits of using generative AI in the workforce.
But then in addition to that, there's a lot of they reference it as BYOAI, bring your own AI. So 78% of them are bringing their own AI tools to work because they're not encouraged, right? We talk about that all the time. Like it's so easy for an organization to say, well, we don't know how to have the conversations around setting up guardrails about doing this responsibly. So we're just going to shut it down
Mhm.
altogether, right? It's not about AI policy or governance, about AI prohibition,
Yeah.
essentially, right? But people are still going to do it and they're still seeing the results anyway, but they're not able to collaborate and learn from
Yeah.
others. So they say that it's at small and medium sized companies, and it's not just Gen Z, it's across all generations. So there's not a generational gap thing that just the younger individuals are doing this. Everyone's
Yeah,
doing
we saw this a couple years ago with predictive AI. We met a fundraiser who left one organization to work at another organization that we were working with, specifically because she felt that she couldn't be as successful in the one that was not using predictive AI as she could in another one that was. So I think we're
Yep.
going to see that at scale with Gen Z and millennials. If you go into an organization and you're interviewing, so really from a recruitment perspective, from a retention perspective and professional development,
Mhm.
like, I think people will walk with their feet the same way they walk with their feet if you don't allow remote working, right? In the very same way, it's like, okay, you're going to come here. I mean, think about the Delta. It's like, we want to hire you, you want to come in, and you're going to have to wear a suit and a tie every day, and you're going to have to come and sit in an office 5 days a week. And by the way, you can't use any generative AI tools to do your job more efficiently, more accurately, or with a higher degree of satisfaction. Like, that's insane. I mean, that's the equivalent of it. And one of my big takeaways for this week is the leader's role in moving that forward is paramount. Yet, I would say a majority of the leaders aren't even aware of the seismic shift, the tectonic shift that's happened in the lower ranks and how they can use these tools to become more efficient, more accurate in their roles. So there's a pretty big gap because I'm like, I had breakfast with one leader. I'm like, it's your job now because your organization doesn't allow this. So your job to go back and basically demand that you don't have unlimited resources. You don't have unlimited people. You need to be able to use tools to allow your team to recruit, to retain, and for your team to produce higher quality results.
When I see these stats coming out from this report, it makes me think we talked about it many times over the social impact satisfaction report, where 74% of people in nonprofits surveyed are looking to leave their job in the next 12 months. Most of them are planning on not coming back to the nonprofit sector. And the number one reason is they don't have enough resources and they have too much work to do. This is the answer,
Yeah.
right? Like it's staring us right in the
Yeah.
face.
If you're not doing it, do it. Start now. I mean, it was
now.
just, I think the Nike theme is just so paramount. Just do it, but do it responsibly. I think that's really
Yeah.
what we're here for. All right. So Microsoft
Yeah.
report, we'll have a link in the show notes. It absolutely must read. There's some really clear takeaways. Take that URL, put it into ChatGPT and ask it to give you the highlights if you want, because that's what we do. So talking about OpenAI, you like how that nice little thread there just keeps on going. There's
Good.
all I
Yeah.
mean, we could have an
Love it.
entire episode almost every week on OpenAI and things they're doing. Sam Altman has been on the move and doing some really incredible interviews. There's a few interviews I watched of him this week, and he's like one of the few people I can watch. I mean, my attention span is crap. I honestly, I could listen to him for an hour, which I did twice, 2 hours this week of just like, it's not what he says, but it's what he doesn't say that really intrigues me. It's the subtleness of like the gaps in what he won't say, because it's kind of like you're all stupid because you don't see how big this is and how big it's going. And that's like, ooh, like I'm always, when I'm listening and reading between the lines of what he's not saying. And so I think it's just
Yeah.
fascinating. Some really good interviews. We could put links in the show notes for those as well. But a couple of things. So Altman and Nadella from Microsoft joined the AI safety board with the US government. It's good news. I think it's interesting news because like we basically have no AI safety standards in the US that are like good at all. And we have developers of AI that have very strong financial incentives to scale AI at any cost, serving as the guardians of responsible AI. And I think I think it's
Yeah.
intriguing. We don't have to make this a political episode, but I'm like, really? Is that the best we can do? And you just hope that their representation is balanced by people that don't have financial incentives in selling AI to everybody on the planet.
Yeah. You hope it goes better than India.
Right.
Right. They came out with their AI regulation and then they took all these steps backwards because the heads of the biggest companies in India are saying, well, we're not going to be able to make a
Yeah.
profit.
And then the government literally retracted it and said, you know what, just kidding. We don't need these regulations. I mean, it was the lobby was strong. Like it's a little, yeah, I guess we'll see where that goes. But second to that, OpenAI released a model spec website this week. And that model spec was basically like, hey, we have a framework for how we're going to build AI now and in the future. It's essentially built so that it does no harm and that these are going to be our guidelines. And I think that's very admirable and I like that a lot. I mean, it's awesome that they're putting it out there and putting it in public. I do feel like it's a little bit of catching the tiger by the tail, that it shows how fast the technological advancements are happening, like so fast that like things like a rocket ship when ChatGPT came out November 30th, 2022, it's just been like trying to breathe because like everything has happened so quickly. So it's not surprising, but it is something from a responsible AI side. And of course, we represent the nonprofit sector and the business of trust, that this would have been the thing that we probably would have. So
Yeah.
we'll put a link to that. I definitely think people should read it because it's like this idea that responsible AI is everyone's responsibility. You're going to use OpenAI, which you should, because it's a just complete workhorse and it will transform your personal life, your professional life, and just give you more time, essentially. But you also should know what's behind it and what's driving the ethos behind it. And so I think I actually really enjoyed reading that and kind of understanding the sentiment behind it.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I like their transparency, right? They're not telling you the weightings, but they're telling you where they want to go with this, how they want it to perform. I don't know how much of it would have come out if it wasn't for Elon Musk with the whole lawsuit of you're not
Right.
open and you should have
No,
been
it's
open.
more open.
But
Yep.
whatever gets us there, gets us
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the stuff
Right.
that everybody cares about, because I mean, this is where we hang on every word, and this is where it's like always trying to listen to what Sam Altman's not saying. So speculations. I mean, I think there's
Yeah,
two
so-
speculations I care about. One is
Okay.
GPT-5, like whenever that is or what it is.
Yeah.
And then Apple's onboard chip. Like those are like two things of news I'll drop anything for, skip a meal for, whatever, if I hear anything about those. So like, yeah, you found some stuff that was some good speculation this week.
Well, first, this isn't in our notes, and you and I haven't talked about this, so this is completely
Oh.
script. But Apple did have their iPad announcement last week, right? And they usually their chips are sequential, right? So iPad Pro was M1, then it had M2. This time it should have had M3, but it just skipped M4, which no other device has. So right now, their iPad Pro has the most powerful chip across all their devices, right? And it's definitely a precursor to WWDC, again, Worldwide Developers Conference, coming out June 10th,
Something
I
like
believe.
that. Yeah.
That where they're going to have all these big announcements. I mean, all these stories coming out about AI just revamping Siri, AI revamping all their apps. Like it's going to be a completely different interface and how we've been used to it. And I made sure that I bought the iPad Pro because I want to have access to that and not have to wait for iPhone 16. I want that as soon as the iPad OS 18 beta.
Yeah, you're a
comes out.
big iPad. I don't follow. I mean, I'm still a traditional Mac person. It's funny because I bring both when I travel, and I use my iPad more. Like when I'm on a flight, I use it pretty much extensively. But you're like a true iPad follower. I feel like it's always an add-on to something that I already have. But yeah,
It is funny because I have a Mac and I have an iPad. I traded in my iPad 2 weeks ago to get the best trade-in value since they were announcing new ones. So I've been
smart.
without it for 2 weeks. But I went on this flight. I didn't have my
Ooh.
iPad. It was kind of a pain for me to bring out my MacBook. I felt like I
So
was
big.
lugging this huge
Yeah.
thing around. Like it would so much more convenient.
All
to
right.
have
So
that.
now you're literally like you're you're like a, I don't know, fly to a light or whatever that is. Like, what is the term? Like, you can't even mention Apple without you like completely diverging in all things. So, all right, apologize to everyone for
I
that,
know. I
but we do get
apologize.
excited
I
about
apologize.
our Mac speculation stuff. So, back to OpenAI, GPT, is it going to be 4.5? Is it
Yeah.
going to be 5? Is it going to be like 3% better or 300% better? Like, that's the whole deal.
So speaking of the interviews you were talking about earlier, they also had the OpenAI's CFO, right? And he's been going around saying that a year from now, what we're going to be able to be using in generative AI is going to make our current use look laughably bad, embarrassingly
Mhm.
bad, right? In all the work you've done, have you ever been at a point where the what you're producing today, you're already embarrassed
Yeah.
about it? No. It's only when you look back at stuff like years. So they already have access to what they're building that they just
And that
haven't
they already
released,
know that this
right?
is embarrassingly bad. Yeah. Sam has been doing this for a little while. Like I've seen him for the last 6 months or so continue to like be interviewed, almost like shy and embarrassed to talk about GPT-4 based on how bad it
Yeah.
is. Because if you're in reality, right? If your goal and the vision, like literally the driving force of your organization is AGI, then this is like child's play, right? GPT-4 is kind
Right.
of like we're in preschool. So I get it when you're
Right.
looking at that continuum, but to your point, he has a clear sight on what AGI looks like and what it will take to get there, and then knows that this is not it yet.
Yeah. So there's these two models that are out on the leaderboard that people have speculation that it is potentially GPT 4.5 and GPT 5 that are really outperforming everything. They're outperforming GPT 4. They're doing mathematical calculations that are they beat one that was the International Math Olympiad math problem. Apparently, like only 4 people in the world are allowed to compete at this each year, and it beat it incredibly fast. So this is probably what we're going to be seeing coming out soon. They do have an announcement. They're going to be live streaming on Monday some new updates to GPT-4 and ChatGPT. Don't know what that's going to be. Speculation that there's going to be a search engine in there, but we'll see in mere 72
Yeah.
hours.
Usability, accessibility. I mean, I honestly, this would sound horrible. Like, I'm still so impressed by GPT-4 all the time. Like, I'm like, it's still in that amazement mode, which probably doesn't say a lot about me, but I'm still like, it's doing things that I hadn't thought of before. I haven't exhausted all of my different creative ways to use it, whether it's on the multimodal side, but there are a few functionality things. Like, I want to speak to it on my computer, not just on my phone. I want it to be able to speak to me on my computer, not just my phone. It's like it's such a basic interface. There's not a widget for it on the Mac yet, which there is for Perplexity, but it's still an incredible tool.
Is it your number one tool still?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's a go-to like I don't think about it tool, it's that over anything, over Google, over Perplexity, over Claude. I use them all kind of differently. It's the only one that I feel like I have a relationship with too. So I've told you that before. I like because I say please and thank you to it, and I've built like this rapport. But I don't do that at all with the
Yeah.
others. The others are very transactional.
That's funny. I forget who I read, but I read something on LinkedIn where this guy was saying he actually did the opposite. He goes in and he's very transactional with ChatGPT, and then he went into his Teams chat and was very like just by muscle memory said, "What does this mean?" No
Mhm.
pleasantries, no even question mark, just very direct to a person. I was incredibly embarrassed about doing it, but like you're taking how you relate to people to relating technology, but other people are taking they're interacting with that so much that that's feeding into how they relate with
Yeah.
people now.
For me, and it's important not to anthropomorphize the relationship with the computer, right? Because it's not real. I know the
Mhm.
difference. I watched the movie Her. I know that things go weird. It is well. There's so many divergent paths I could go here, but I think the part where I felt like I understood the technology a bit differently than say a Google search was when I started not thinking about it as like a binary tool. Like it was this thing that if I ask it this, it will give me this. And it would give me the same thing every time. Or like a Google search will just give me lots of different results, but that I could have an iterative conversation. And so more, I think, was that more psychological part of breaking that barrier of like opening my mind to be like, hey, I know you're not a person, but I know that it helps me use the tool better if I think about it in a very iterative capacity. And so yeah, please and thank you. I also changed my settings. This is actually embarrassing, but like, so, well, one of the voices you use on ChatGPT, I don't know which voice you use, but I use Sam's voice from Her, the movie Her. with Scarlett Johansson and Joaquin Phoenix. And I also, in my settings, I have it to say, take on the mannerisms of Samantha and her, meaning talk to me by my first name. And then kind of the other things of like, don't give me an opinion and make things short, but don't make it too short that you sacrifice accuracy. But when I trained, and I saw that on like, I don't know what, YouTube or something like a year ago, that actually it actually increased my adoption of chat quite extensively.
I don't know if I've done that. I've put in my own personal settings, but I don't know if I've really played around with how I wanted to a little bit. And I guess my number one tool right now is Perplexity.
Yeah.
I'm in it
You're a
every day.
fact guy.
And
you like facts and you like accuracy. So that doesn't surprise me.
I do. And I find that I'm using Claude Opus as the model more than I'm using GPT.
Opus is great.
I do like the fact that you can write something in and then I can just see how Claude responds to the same exact query as ChatGPT, as Mistral, as any of those other ones. And it's just right there. It's so
well, the
easy.
library too. So for those that aren't using or haven't used Perplexity,
Mhm.
and again, in fairness, if I went on this path and somebody asked me if I can only spend $20 a month on any of these, like right now I have subscriptions for all three, like Claude, Perplexity, and OpenAI. But it'd be hard, right? I'd be torn because Perplexity is because it gives you the flexibility of using all the different models, but it doesn't do multimodal, right? So I
Right.
like multimodal. Like I had this idea the other day. The URL that I bought the other day was Gen AI Master, so like Jedi Master, but Gen AI Master .ai, and I was like, ooh, what would an image look like for this? And so of course, like I'm just like kind of take off my creative thing in OpenAI, but I can't do that in Perplexity.
No, you can do images. You can do multimodal output, but not input. I can't have it watch a video. You can have ChatGPT watch a video. I can't have Perplexity watch a video.
I couldn't get an image out of Perplexity.
There's a generate image.
All right, new things. I'm learning new things.
Yeah, top right.
I'll have to change my opinion.
It's weird because it's not a prompt. So in any thread, any conversation you have with Perplexity, you can click generate image. It'll give you options of, do you want a drawing? Do you want a chart? Like, gives you these 4 set options, and then it's built off of everything that you've said. So it's not a straight directive of build me a picture of XYZ.
I'm going to report back next week. I'm going to try that. I will say, here's another really, really strong advantage of Perplexity is that last week we were on a call. I found a report on a website from UC San Diego where I used to work. And I was like, oh, my natural thing now would be grab the URL, put it into OpenAI. And we were on a call when I was doing this to just summarize this report for me. And then the report was around how universities, UCSD and I think UC Davis, have created their own large language models, like with all of the data within the university, and it just made a lot of sense. And chat says, I'm sorry, I can't provide you any information from that website. I was like, what? Like, that's weird. It's got to be an error. So I'm like, well, try again. Like, I know you can read the internet, right? And it's like, yes, I can read the internet, but sorry for the confusion. And then it's like, no, I can't give you any information from this website. And I said, what is prohibiting you from giving me information on this website? And they said, it's a robot.txt file that's embedded in the HTML that prohibits me from looking at this website. I'm like, this is going to be crazy because we're talking about the switch from search engine optimization to generative engine optimization and how if you can't index certain web pages, they're not going to show up in search. And the implications of that are pretty big. And then Perplexity, I'm like, we're on the phone. I'm like, well, let me try Perplexity. And with Perplexity, I could pick Llama as an open source model. And guess what happened? Open source model, Llama, it's like
bypass all guardrails.
All guardrails says, here's an exact summary of that web page that you want. And so all this to say is that this is so much the Wild West, right? It's really hard to say. You might have said that you really liked Pi or some other one and you invested a lot of time getting to know it and it getting to know you and then find out that it's like gone one day. I mean, that's literally how the movie Her ends, right? So, I mean, full circle, back to Scarlett Johansson. She might not stay around. I mean, it's amazing because like that movie is like today. So one other so we don't have a lot of time, but there's one other tool that came out this week that is freaking rad. I don't know if you've played with it yet. It's the new Adobe Firefly. That on an image, I mean, from an image generation perspective, it is like, it's insane. Not surprising because Adobe's kind of been the king of the image space for so long. It is amazing, like photographic like quality images, but it gives you these settings where you can try different like popular styles. And so it's same image, but in a different style, like anything like hand drawn, paper drawn, painted, fresco, whatever you want. And just like with one click, and it outputs multiple versions. I think 4 versions or 6 versions per image. And then you can drill into those images. It's super top notch. If you're into image creation
That's
or
cool.
in communications, donor relations, things like that, where you're going to actually do some image generation, it blows. It's pretty rad. So I would just say, like, definitely check out Adobe.
You also talked to me about Dolly's new editing
Yeah.
tool.
Oh my gosh.
You love that, right? I
Oh
haven't
my
played
gosh,
around with
it's
that
so
either.
cool. I mean, you can now click on an image, and I haven't tested this on my computer, but I know it works on the phone and the iPad. So you can click on an image, you can highlight a specific area of the image and have it regenerate just that one area. So I was working on Gen AI Master AI images just for fun. It created a person with a not lightsaber, but a light sword because I can't use lightsaber on George Lucas. And I just selected my finger with the person and I'm like, replace the background to a forest. And it just does this like instantly, magically. You can regenerate parts of the image, the full image, just by clicking and holding your finger on the image itself. It opens up a pop-up window and it gives you a new menu that didn't exist like a month or 2 months ago. So again, it's hard to say what you like better on any of these things because they've changed so much, but you just got to play with it and continue to move forward and find the tool that works best for the job that you have or whatever your
Yeah.
joy is in life.
Yeah. And still just crazy to think that all of this is laughably bad
Right.
to what's going to be coming out
Yeah,
next.
the worst AI you'll ever use is today. I do think we'll have to wrap this up, but I think I left this week while we had lots of high level philosophical even conversations about like the future and how that where things are going and you don't want to be left behind. I think people still need a very practical like bite size like just to unlock that part of your brain of like in my role as a fundraiser, in my role as a prospect researcher, it's in my role, what are like 3 quick examples in 3 minutes? And I think you and I have this. I literally woke up at 4 o'clock this morning thinking about this, how like literally we're going to brainstorm and put together this like rapid fire, like fundraising in a box challenge where we can show you X number of examples per job function that quickly. So if you're listening to the podcast, you're in the fundraising nonprofit world, stay tuned because we're definitely on the challenge. I didn't wake up at 4 a.m. thinking about this for nothing.
I woke up at 4, but it's because I had to catch a plane. I wasn't thinking
Yeah.
about this.
Well, I'm just on East Coast time, so I don't have an excuse other than that. All right. Well, Scott, we only covered about 25% of what we wanted to, but I
Yeah.
knew we lost you when I talked about Apple. That just took us down a whole different
I
path.
know. I went
No,
rogue. I went rogue. I tend to do that.
It's people need to know, and your nerdiness is to their benefit. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you again next week on the Fundraising AI podcast, where we're talking about AI, fundraising, giving you information that you need to stay up. If you like this, tell your friends. If you don't like it, don't tell anyone.
Yeah. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know what you like. And be back.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Oh, thanks.